Okay, welcome back everyone to the deep dive. So today we're diving into something pretty big, a critical look at Canada.
Right.
Specifically, we're looking at it as a travel destination for 2026. Everyone thinks Canada, they think stunning nature.
Absolutely. Mountains, lakes, the whole deal.
Exactly. But let's be honest here, there's also the cost factor. It's not exactly known for being cheap, is it?
That's a big part of the conversation, definitely. Significant expense often comes up.
So our mission today really is to sift through all this material. We've got travel notes, cost analyses, regional guides, the works.
Yeah, a whole stack of detailed stuff. Not just brochures. This is like the financial blueprint.
Right. Gets into the nitty-gritty.
hmm
Regional highlights, yeah, but also the hard numbers. Costs for everything.
From museum tickets to, that fancy mountain lodge, it's all in there. West Coast planning, Rocky scale, Eastern diversity.
And what we want to do is give you, the listener, the shortcut. Like, distill all this down.
Get past the glossy pictures.
Yeah, get beyond the usual tour spiel. Give you the synthesized knowledge you actually need to figure out the real costs, the culture, what kind of financial commitment you're really looking at for a trip that feels worthwhile.
Strip away the fluff, get to the core truth.
Exactly. So let's frame that big question right off the bat, based on everything we've seen in these notes.
Okay.
There's this tension, right, between the potential experience could be a $30 hostel, could be a $300 lodge, and the actual investment. Money, sure, but also time, because Canada's huge.
Massive. Traversing it takes time.
So how does that investment stack up against the reward you actually get? What's the real value proposition here?
Let's unpack that, starting maybe out west on the Pacific coast.
Good place to start, Vancouver. All right, so when our sources talk about the West, Vancouver is front and center, and the description they use is pretty spot on. Nestled between ocean and mountains.
It really is. That geography isn't just pretty. It basically defines the city, drives the lifestyle, but also, the costs.
And what jumps out immediately is how easy it is to switch between, city life and proper wilderness.
Yeah, that blend is key. It's seamless. You don't always need a whole separate trip to get into nature. It's right there.
Like Stanley Park. It's enormous right downtown.
Oh, it's incredible. Frames the whole city center. And that seawall.
Perfect example. You can walk it, bike it. It's iconic, super accessible, and pretty much free, right?
Yeah.
Great for anyone watching their budget.
Gives you that instant outdoor fix without spending much. Just stunning views for the cost of maybe a bike rental or nothing if you're walking.
And then you can just pop over the bridge to Granville Island Market. Totally different vibe, bustling, urban, lots of food, crafts.
Yeah, that's a great little snapshot of the city's two sides. Urban energy, local flavor.
But okay, if you want more nature, the mountains are literally staring at you.
Right across the water. You can hike Grouse Mountain, which is nearby, or check out the Capilano Suspension Bridge.
Now here's where the costs start to kick in, like our sources point out. Stanley Park is mostly free exploration, but these other spots.
Exactly. These are more developed, managed attractions, so they have entry fees. The sources suggest, typically $5 to $15 for basic park entry or access to places like that.
Yeah, around that range, which sets a kind of baseline expectation, doesn't it?
It does. Even with all that wilderness, accessing the convenient, maintained bits often costs something, which makes sense, upkeep and all that.
Totally understandable. Okay, so moving from those access fees to just living costs, day-to-day stuff in Vancouver, what do the numbers say?
Well, dining is a really clear example of Vancouver's split personality, financially speaking.
How so?
You've got a fantastic budget food scene. Food trucks are huge, lots of casual spots, ethnic food. You can often get a decent meal for $10, maybe $15 CAD.
Okay, that's pretty good for a major city. And probably tasty, too, given the diversity.
Oh, yeah, the food's great. Big plus for budget travelers.
Mm-hmm.
But then, there's the other end.
A high end.
Exactly. Vancouver has some seriously world-class restaurants. If you're aiming for those upscale places, the sources say you're immediately looking at $50 per person, minimum. And that's probably before drinks, tax, tip.
Wow. Okay, so the difference between a cheap eats day and a fancy dinner day is massive.
Astronomical, potentially. It really highlights that cost range.
And I assume that range applies to accommodation, too. Maybe even more so.
Oh, definitely. Accommodation is where it can get really painful. The spectrum is enormous.
Driven by, high property values, limited space?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Classic expensive coastal city issues. Now, if you're young or really committed to saving cash, you can find hostel beds. The sources put those around $30 to $50 a night.
Still not super cheap, but doable.
Doable, yeah. But the second you want a private room, your own bathroom, standard hotel stuff, the price just
So
skyrockets.
what are we talking for, mid-range or luxury?
Well, the sources say even standard mid-range hotels often start at $150 CAD plus per night. Luxury goes way up from there, obviously.
Okay, that's a really crucial point for you, the listener, to grasp. That huge swing in costs means Vancouver isn't a place you could just wing it, budget-wise.
Not really.
Yeah.
You need a plan. Careful planning, almost surgical, like you said. Otherwise, you'll get sticker shock.
Right, because you could technically have a great day for maybe $50, $60 if you hike, use transit, grab street food.
Totally. Very possible.
Or you could blow $400 without even trying hard.
Huh?
Capilano Bridge, maybe a taxi or two, one nice dinner, and a basic hotel room. Boom.
Exactly. So your travel style, your willingness to maybe rough it a bit on accommodation or stick to cheaper eats, that's the biggest factor in your daily spend in Vancouver. The options are there for both ends of the spectrum, but staying in that middle ground, that takes conscious effort. Smart planning, as the sources call it.
Okay, let's shift gears. Big jump now. We're leaving the coast, heading east over the prairies.
This is the big stuff.
Alberta and the Canadian Rockies. This is the Canada you see on postcards, right? Banff, Jasper National Parks. Monumental scale.
Yeah. And the whole cost dynamic changes here. You're moving from city costs to, well, protected wilderness costs. Different ballgame.
What defines this region, according to the sources? It's not just size, is it?
No, it's the features. Stunning, raw geography. The sources really hammer this home. Huge glaciers, those unbelievably blue lakes.
The turquoise ones?
Yeah, the glacial melt lakes, crystal clear.
Right.
And tons of wildlife just around. It's majestic, no other word for it. You feel small in a good way.
So if you make it out there, what are the absolute must-sees? The non-negotiables?
Lake Louise and Moraine Lake
Yeah.
usually top the list. They're world famous for a reason. Just iconic Canadian beauty.
But getting in to see them isn't like just strolling to a city park. There's access management, right? Fees.
Right. This is key for budgeting. Unlike Stanley Park, these are national parks. Access is controlled, and there's a baseline cost. The park entry fees.
And what do those look like?
The sources say daily entry fees are around $10 to $20 CAD per day. It's usually per person or sometimes per vehicle, depends on the park pass structure. You can get longer passes too, like a discovery pass for multiple parks or days.
Okay, so $10, $20 a day. That doesn't sound too bad initially, but if you're planning to stay a while...
Exactly. That's what you need to realize. If you want to spend, say, 5 days exploring Banff, hiking different trails, that $10, $20 per day becomes $50 to $100 per person right off the top just to be there. It's a foundational cost.
Got it. Now, once you're in the park, what about activities? Is
Oh.
everything expensive?
That's where it gets interesting. There's a real contrast based on how much effort you want to put in or how specialized you want to get.
Meaning?
Meaning you can have incredible experiences for free. Just hiking. There are tons of well-marked trails, amazing views. It just requires your own energy. Self-guided exploration is huge there.
Okay, so hiking is mostly free once you've paid the park entry.
Right. But then you have the classic Rockies experiences.
Like canoeing on Lake Louise.
Exactly.
Mm.
Or taking a guided tour to see wildlife. Or maybe walking on a glacier with a guide. Those are different. They involve equipment, guides, insurance, risk.
So they cost more. How much more are we talking?
The sources give a range. From free hiking, obviously, up to $100 or more for, say, a half-day specialized guided tour. It varies a lot.
So you're paying for the expertise, the safety, the access you couldn't get on your own.
Pretty much. And the sources kind of suggest that for a really full experience, you'd probably want to budget for maybe 2 or 3 of those paid activities during your Rockies trip.
Okay. And then accommodation again. I bet there's a big split here, too.
Oh, yeah. Probably one of the starkest divides in Canada because location is everything in the Rockies.
So what are the options?
You can go super budget. There are basic rustic hostels in the towns like Banff or Jasper or designated campgrounds, even overflow spots sometimes. Those can be incredibly cheap, like $20 to $40 a night.
Which is great for hikers, backpackers, lets you stay longer.
Totally. Makes an extended stay affordable. But then you have the other end, the dream.
The big lodges, like the Fairmont Chateau Lake Louise.
Exactly. Those iconic, historic mountain lodges. That's a major investment. The sources say prices jump immediately to $150, easily hit $300, and can go much, much higher per night, especially in peak season.
Wow. So that $150, $300 plus entrant, what are you actually paying for? Just a nicer room?
Not just that, this is a key point the sources make. It's about the scenic payoff. It's the justification for the cost.
Meaning the view.
A location. Yeah, for travelers who really prioritize that waking up in the postcard, the history, the comfort, having that jaw-dropping view right outside your window, the high cost is almost seen as necessary to get that specific setting.
So it's not just a bet, it's buying immersion.
Exactly. The sources frame it as a deliberate trade-off. You sacrifice budget flexibility for waking up at Lake Louise. For some people, that specific experience is worth the massive price tag.
It's the difference between driving to the iconic spot versus living in it for a night or two.
Precisely. And the sources are clear. If that high comfort, fully immersive, postcard perfect experience is your goal, then yeah, the high price is pretty much non-negotiable in those prime locations. All right, so now we make the biggest jump conceptually and maybe physically too. We're leaving the wide open spaces, the mountains.
And heading east to the big cities.
Yeah, shifting to the high density, high energy vibe of Eastern Canada. Let's focus on Toronto as the main hub there. The whole focus changes less raw nature, more urban buzz, culture, institutions.
Okay, Toronto. Massive city, super diverse. What are the key things our sources point to as defining the experience there?
It's really anchored by its major cultural institutions, world-class museums for sure.
Right.
The Art Gallery of Ontario, the AJO, gets mentioned specifically.
The AJO is fantastic.
And of course, you can't miss the CN Tower. It just dominates the skyline. Instantly recognizable.
So those are like the anchors for a city visit. And unlike park fees, these have specific ticket prices, right?
Exactly. More predictable costs here. The sources suggest major museum entry is generally in the $15 to $25 CAD range.
Okay.
The CN Tower, being kind of a unique attraction, is often at the higher end of that, maybe a bit more sometimes. Makes sense, it's a huge tourist draw.
Right. But one thing that's interesting about Toronto, according to the sources, is getting around. It's actually pretty efficient and not too expensive.
Yeah, that's a big plus, especially for budget planning. The public transit system, the TTC, subway, streetcars, is described as excellent, and fares are around $3 scatter ride.
That's huge because in a lot of big North American cities, transport costs can kill your budget if you're relying on taxis or ride sharing.
Totally. So if you stick to public transit in Toronto, you can cover a lot of ground pretty efficiently and keep those daily travel costs quite low. That helps offset maybe higher museum or food costs.
Speaking of food, what's the baseline cost like in Toronto? Similar to Vancouver.
It seems pretty consistent, actually. The sources mention casual dining starting around $12 CAD. So yeah, similar to Vancouver, it reinforces that national baseline. Even a basic lunch in a major eastern city isn't super cheap. That $12 figure is important data for budget planning.
Okay. But a trip to the east, especially southern Ontario, often includes something else, right? Something big and watery nearby.
Ah, yes. Can't forget Niagara Falls.
Our sources flag that as a key eastern experience. And apparently, it's quite accessible from Toronto.
Very accessible. And the sources offer a good cost-benefit point here. You don't necessarily need to rent a car and deal with the traffic yourself.
How so?
Packaged tours. You can get organized bus tours from Toronto to Niagara Falls for, the sources say, around $50 to $70 CAD.
Okay, that's pretty reasonable. Includes transport, maybe a guide?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes the hassle out of it, makes visiting one of the world's biggest natural spectacles pretty straightforward and budget-friendly, relatively speaking. A good value add-on to a Toronto stay.
So for Toronto, the equation's a bit different. Maybe higher costs for specific attractions and that baseline food cost, but you save on getting around using the efficient, cheaper transit.
Exactly. It makes navigating the city potentially fit within that tighter $100 to $200 daily budget, provided you're leaning heavily on that $3 transit fare. Okay, so we've hit the big cities, the iconic parks. But if this is a deep dive, we need to go a bit deeper, right? Look at some other layers of the Canadian experience.
Absolutely. What else do the sources highlight?
Well, something really important they emphasize is the opportunity for authentic cultural experiences, specifically related to Canada's Indigenous heritage. This goes way beyond just sightseeing.
Yeah, that sounds crucial. Moving beyond just looking at landscapes to understanding the history in the landscape, how do you access that?
through things like guided tours, often led by members of the communities themselves, or visiting dedicated cultural centers. The sources call these powerful, authentic travel experiences.
Powerful and authentic. And what about the cost? Are these experiences expensive?
Surprisingly accessible, actually. The sources give a typical cost range of about $30 to $70 CAD for these kinds of tours or center visits.
$30 to $70.
Yeah.
That's comparable to, or even less than, going up the CN Tower.
Exactly. And think about the value proposition there. For that price, you're gaining access to deep cultural knowledge, history, authentic perspectives from First Nations, Inuit, or Métis communities.
It's an investment in understanding, not just entertainment.
Precisely. The sources really stress how important these are for getting a richer, less superficial grasp of the country. A really high-return item to budget for, if you ask me.
Definitely sounds like it. Okay, what else? Any other dimensions?
And then there's the big one, geographically speaking. The Canadian North.
Ah, the territories. Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut.
Yeah. This is painted as a totally different beast. For the adventurous traveler, we're talking unique wildlife, polar bears, maybe caribou migrations, and just vast, pristine wilderness on a scale that's hard to comprehend.
Sounds incredible, but I sense a but coming.
Oh, a big but. The sources are crystal clear. This requires higher costs and significant travel planning. Emphasis on significant.
Meaning flights, logistics.
All of the above. Getting there is expensive. Flights to remote northern communities can cost a fortune, potentially more than your international flight to Canada. Infrastructure is limited. You might need specialized gear, guides.
So this isn't a casual side trip.
Not at all. The sources frame the North as a specialty investment. It's for travelers who are maybe prioritizing that specific, remote, high-latitude experience above all else, perhaps as a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
And are willing to pay a serious premium for it.
Exactly. The promise is unforgettable rewards, but it comes with a major price tag and logistical hurdles. It targets a very specific type of traveler, deep pockets, or deep commitment to that kind of adventure. Someone who wants solitude, raw nature, maybe the Northern Lights, and is prepared for the cost.
Got it. So not for the average budget-conscious tourist. What about something more accessible? Do the sources mention seasonality?
Yes, definitely. They talk about festivals as being key year-round draw cards. This is important because it shows Canada isn't just a summer destination. There's stuff happening all the time.
Like what kind of festivals?
Well, they give some big examples. The Calgary Stampede out west, huge rodeo, Western culture showcase. The Montreal Jazz Festival, world-renowned, brings in top international artists. And then various winter carnivals across the country celebrating, making the most of winter.
Right, embracing the snow and ice.
Yeah.
And what's the cost situation with these festivals? Do you need expensive tickets for everything?
Often no, that's the nice thing. Many of these festivals have big free components, street performers, parades, outdoor stages, general atmosphere. You can soak up a lot just by being there.
But for the main events, headline acts.
Yeah, for those, you'll need tickets. The sources say ticketed shows can range from maybe $15 for smaller things up to $100 or more for the really big names or premium events. So there's a tiered structure. You can engage at the level that fits your budget, from free participation to premium seats. Okay, so we've journeyed across the country, looked at cities, mountains, culture, the North, festivals. We've seen specific costs for hotels, food, parks, tours.
Time to pull it all together. Synthesize this into practical advice. What's the bottom line on cost for someone planning for 2026?
The synthesis is pretty blunt, honestly, and consistent. Canada is expensive. That's the main takeaway, the major constraint you have to work with.
Especially as
Vancouver, Toronto, Banff, Jasper. Anywhere with high demand, limited supply, prices get pushed up. That's just the reality.
So, given that reality, what kind of budget are we actually talking about? Do the sources give a benchmark figure?
They do. They provide a figure for what they call the average mid-range traveler. And that figure is $100 to $200 CAD per day.
$100 to $200 Canadian per day.
Yeah.
So, does that feel right, based on everything we just discussed?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Because, just thinking about it, if a basic hotel in Vancouver starts at $150 and lunch is $12 plus fin, and you want to do anything else, how do you stay under $200, let alone near $100?
You've nailed the critical nuance here. That $100 to $200 figure isn't comfortable cruising altitude. It's an average that, according to the sources, requires smart planning.
Okay, what does smart planning actually mean in this context? Because that range has to cover everything, right? Accommodation, food, transport, activities.
Everything. And smart planning basically means you cannot consistently stay in $150 hotels and eat $50 dinners and expect to hit that average. It requires making strategic trade-offs.
So it's not just planning, it's like active budget management day by day.
Exactly. It means balancing things out. If you splurge on a $250 lodge one night, you need to counteract that with maybe 2 or 3 nights in a $40 hostel or a budget motel later on.
Or eating cheap supermarket lunches for a few days. Using free activities like hiking to offset the cost of a museum or a tour.
Precisely. It requires discipline, actively looking for deals, using public transit religiously in cities, maybe cooking some of your own meals if you have access to a kitchen. That $100, $200 is achievable, the sources imply, but it takes conscious effort and compromise. It's not a passive average.
Got it. Okay, that's the daily budget. What about the bigger picture, getting around this massive country?
Right, the logistics of vastness. That's the other major factor besides daily cost. Canada is just huge, second largest country in the world. Time becomes a critical resource too.
So how do you tackle the distances? We know public transit is good within cities.
Yeah, excellent in major cities, a real cost saver there.
But between, say, Vancouver and Calgary, or Calgary and Toronto, driving takes days. Trains are scenic, but slow and not always cheap.
Which leads to the inevitable conclusion in the sources. Domestic flights. State flights are pretty much necessary to cover vast distances efficiently, especially if you have limited vacation time.
Okay, necessary, but probably not cheap either.
Generally not, no.
Yeah.
Especially compared to budget airlines in Europe or Asia. So you absolutely have to factor the cost of potentially several $100s per internal flight into your overall trip budget.
Which just reinforces the whole Canada's expensive theme. It's not just the daily spend, it's the cost of actually moving around the country effectively.
Exactly. It adds another significant layer to the total investment required. Great rewards geographically, but it demands that financial input to access them efficiently. Hashtag tag outro.
All right, so we've synthesized the regions, the culture, the costs, the logistics.
Yeah.
Based purely on all the source material we've dug through, what's the final verdict? For that 2026 traveler, is Canada genuinely worth the significant cost and effort?
You know, pulling it all together, the sources point towards yes.
Yeah.
A resounding yes, actually. And it's an important but. It's worth it specifically for travelers seeking that particular blend Canada offers.
Which is?
That mix of absolutely vast, stunning natural beauty, combined with genuinely rich cultural experiences, especially the Indigenous connections, and clean, safe, vibrant city life. If that combination excites you, then the sources say yes, it delivers.
They also seem to highlight other positives, right? Intangibles.
Yeah, things like overall diversity, cleanliness, safety, reliability, the sheer scale and variety of what's on offer. You can have so many different kinds of trips within one country. That quality and safety factor seems to be part of the justification for the higher price point.
So framing it as an investment.
Exactly. From an investment perspective, the sources conclude that while, yes, it's undeniably pricey, the unique combination of adventure, culture, and quality makes it worth the investment in 2026. The potential reward is very high, but it absolutely demands that conscious financial input and that smart planning discipline we talked about.
Okay, so the actionable takeaway for you, the listener, seems clear. If what excites you is the idea of balancing rugged hiking in the Rockies one week with exploring Indigenous history and maybe hitting world-class museums in a city the next.
And if you're prepared to be strategic about your budget, using those $40 hostels sometimes, taking advantage of free nature walks to balance out paid attractions.
Then Canada should definitely be high on your list for 2026.
Absolutely. But that leaves us with one final thought, kind of a provocative question that emerges from this whole cost versus diversity tension we've seen in the sources.
Okay, what's that?
Considering the sheer range geographically, culturally, and financially, everything from needing a potentially expensive flight just across the country to that choice between a $30 hostel bed and a $300 plus luxury lodge with a view, how should you, the learner, actually prioritize where your money goes if you can't afford to do it all?
Right. What's the better return on investment?
Yeah. Is it better to stretch your budget to cover more ground, see more regions, maybe experience the West Coast and the East Coast, but do it all on a tighter, more basic budget, get the breadth?
Yeah.
Or should you focus that same total budget on maximizing the depth and quality of just one specific regional experience? Maybe you skip the cross-country flight, stay entirely in the Rockies, but splurge on that incredible mountain lodge for a few nights, really soak in that specific scenic payoff, even though it means sacrificing the variety of seeing other parts of Canada.
Breadth versus depth, dictated by budget.
Exactly. Which experience provides the maximum return when you know you can't have everything? That's the real Canadian travel dilemma the sources leave us pondering.